Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. Yes, I am your host, Al Richards. And yes, again, we're in my mom's living room again. We're turning my mom's living room into a flipping studio. Um, I'm very blessed that she's okay with it so far. Hey, I am really excited. As you guys hear me say this at the beginning of pretty much every show, and it's because I am. I love doing these shows. I love sitting down with individuals. I've got my lovely friend Diane with us today. This is the third time she's been on the show.
It is.
Number 3,
It is.
right? You got the new
I'm
record
honored.
now.
Yeah.
I love it. So Diane and I today, we're going to talk about, we don't reveal our loved ones' addiction. And we wanted to go with that topic because since I've started doing the show, I've really had a hard time finding people who are on the other side, like Diane and I, to want to come on the show and talk about something that's very painful to talk about. Also, some of them don't want to feel like they're throwing their loved ones under the bus, right? Which I understand. I get it because I kept my wife's addiction hidden from my family and friends for a long period of time. The problem with that, at least it was for me, it dragged me down that damn rabbit hole so much. As you guys heard me talk about in 2019, I wanted to go take my life because I wasn't letting my feelings out. Being able to talk about it, I think, is very therapeutic. Diane and I were sitting here talking before we came on the show, and there's things that she's gone through and things that she has seen that I never even thought of looking at. And I hope it's vice versa. So we're hoping our listeners will get a better understanding. We're going to be talking about a few different things on here, like forgiveness and a couple other things. So without further ado, I'd like to say, Diane, thank you so much for being here again for the third time.
Thank you. I am honored and you're welcome.
Yes. You've seen all these stages of the show, right? You came to the studio when before it was really turning into a really nice studio, and then when it was a great studio.
Yes.
Now here we are in a living room.
I love it. It's wherever it works.
Right?
And the same thing happens.
Yeah.
Healing and understanding. So
yeah. So you were just saying, just as I was about ready to click record, you and I probably met right around about the same time through the West Jordan Chamber of Commerce, doing some networking.
Correct.
Not realizing each of us was going through the same doggone thing.
We were. And when did you join the chamber? Do you remember?
I started getting involved with the chamber like around 2010, somewhere 2011. So it's been quite a few years.
So this was after you lost your job?
After I lost my job in 2009, yeah.
Yeah, in 2010 was when my world kind of came crumbling down. Actually, it was part of 2009. So I was thinking that a lot of what happened to you was 2009, and then you joined the chamber. And no, neither one of us knew. Mm-hmm. I think it was a like friend that was big in the chamber that kind of connected us, and she was very careful in anything she said on your behalf or mine. But I did kind of find out in that manner. And I kept wanting to approach you, but I didn't know how. Plus, I was still in that. I'm in denial. My world has crumbled. I don't know if I could talk about it. That kind of thing. So.
Well, and it took me all the way till 2019, really, before after thinking about taking my gun and going up in the mountains and taking my life, to where I really finally started opening up and really started talking about it the most. And I was in shock of how many people you and I have networked with throughout all these years that was coming up to me going, hey, you got a minute to talk in private? And I'd be like, yeah, and we'd go off in the corner somewhere. They're like, I don't know if you knew, but I used to be an alcoholic, or I used to be an addict, or so-and-so that in my family. And I'd be like,
shocked.
Oh my gosh, no kidding.
Because it's taboo.
It is taboo.
We don't talk about it. And I'm hoping to break that. And you're doing that with this podcast. And that's what makes me so pleased. And I listen to almost every one of them, and I learned something from all of them. And I'm really pleased too, we mentioned together when we were talking, the last couple of guests you had were on the other side. Mm-hmm. And that I love hearing both sides, because as you know, both of us have done a lot of healing. Just hearing people's success story, if they're the alcoholic or the addict, we feel like that still helps us heal.
Oh yeah.
Because we see it's possible, we see there's purpose and trying to get sober and making amends with loved ones, and that's where forgiveness comes in, I think. And we were
Yeah.
talking about that. And forgiveness is not easy. Some people decide, well, I'm not forgiving this person, they're out of my life. And that might be the best way they can handle it, you know, and they have to do that. And they say, but you can't forgive, but still keep them out of your life. But then there's the forgiveness and keeping them in your life. And as we chatted, forgiveness isn't always right away or 100%. And I think people need to understand, this is what helped me, is you don't have to forgive in that 100%. You could maybe just be a work in progress. You may be 50-50. That doesn't mean your marriage is over. You're still working on it.
Yeah. Well, and how it was for me is when I hit my knees and did a fasting and all that stuff, which I hadn't done since I was a teenager, right?
Right.
And that word forgiveness kept coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I remember telling, for me, my higher power is God. And I remember I kept telling God, do you want me to forgive her? Heck no, that ain't gonna happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's done this to me, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened, no way that I'm gonna do it. And it was like my dad used to do, thump me on the
Yeah.
head with his finger. Finally, my light bulb went off. It was forgiving myself.
True.
Because I had to forgive myself because number one, I was doing my best to be a therapist of something I had
So did
no
I.
clue, right? No clue. I had no clue about it. In
Yeah.
all honesty, you
Yeah.
know, just what I was seeing on the surface. I had no clue the depth it went.
Yes.
And then also a lot of the things I said, which was very, very harmful.
And we didn't
Right.
realize.
And we
it
didn't
was-
realize because we were doing it thinking we were helping when really, I just like to put it this way, I was pissing fuel
Yeah.
on the fire is all I was doing. I was making it worse.
Right.
And it's hard for us on the other side. And I think it's also hard, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, not to want to share, right? Because
Yes.
it's not that, how do I put this? It's not that I want to make myself look like I'm up here
Right.
and the person who's battling addiction is down here, because that's not the case. However, that's how it seems. And the person that's battling addiction, that's how they're looking
That's
at it,
how
right?
they
You're
look
putting
at
yourself on a pedestal and you're leaving me down here, because my wife told me that when I first started the podcast.
Mm,
She's like, I don't want you to do it because you're in there talking crap about me and you think you're better than me. And she was just starting her recovery at that time.
right.
Until she came into the studio and watched the show is when she realized that's not what it's about.
Exactly. And I think you just, I hope it helped her in a way too, because talking about it, a lot of times men don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And as women, we tend to want to speak more about it typically. Now, I've had friends that are friends since grade school, and we just see each other on occasion. And when they heard some of these different calls for my loved one, they have opinions. And suddenly it's like, well, you need to do this and shoulda.
Oh, yeah.
I heard the shoulda.
Yeah. Don't shit on me.
You don't should. So a lot of that, and you know what that did to me? Shut me right down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boy, I closed up and I thought, I'm not sharing with you. And one of the only friends of mine that I feel like, for me personally, just because her father was an alcoholic, and I think she actually contacted you one time and said, hey, I'm Diane's friend, and my father was an alcoholic on the weekends, and that's how he was, and he definitely was an alcoholic, how he drank every weekend. But she was very grateful for what she heard you doing, and she knew my story. And I'm able to talk with her and share, and she's very open to it because she went through that as a child,
Yeah.
and she does understand the disease. So that's the connection.
With what Diane just said, I want you guys to get it because I didn't, and I literally just now got the aha moment. When we start opening up us on the other side, and we have those people giving us their opinions, right? Because I got a ton of those too,
Oh, yeah.
right? Oh, try the hard love. No, try the soft love.
Yeah.
Oh, try to ignore them. No, try to do this, or you
Right.
should do this, or you should do that. That's exactly how the person that's battling addiction feels when we're doing that to
That's
them.
true. That's true.
It's
You
exactly
got
how
a
they're
really
feeling,
good
right?
point. Yeah,
I didn't even think of
Yeah.
that until you just said that.
I agree with you. And I thought I was a therapist too.
We shut down, right? We shut down, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what our loved ones do.
They
They
do.
shut down. I don't want to
Close
hear
that
it.
door, walk away,
Yeah,
they're out. especially, as a man, with my situation, my spouse, he just, no way, not talking about it, not talking about it. And actually, that's how his whole family kind of grew up, was they didn't, and that's the generation, so I'm not gonna blame anyone, because they just didn't have good conversations and really speak about what was trouble in the family, maybe, So
Yeah.
of course, that kind of furthers that addiction if we never speak about it. It just stays in that little ugly space.
You're right.
So, yeah,
You're right.
agreed.
I like to look at it as, what was the three monkeys when we were kids? The one
Hear
that
no
went like
evil,
this and
see no evil.
like this, right? Because
Think no evil,
some
yeah.
families are like that. They think as
Yeah.
long as it's not looked at or talked about,
Mhm.
it's forgotten, right?
Yeah.
And it's not.
No, these are the
It's
wounds
not.
that fester.
Yeah,
And that what you have always said is that then they cover it up with, pills or drugs, alcohol, to try to cover up what they've been hiding all their childhood. And I've heard someone say too, you have to heal your childhood past, because there's a lot of that we carry forward and we either hide or never share. And I think that one of the smartest things you can do is maybe get a good therapist that lets you share, someone that is objective where they're not someone you know personally.
Yeah.
I think you have to have a good one though, that you feel comfortable with, that you can talk to. But I'm sure you probably did this too. Did you do therapy with Janan at all?
I did not. I tried the Al-Anon.
Yeah, and you and I both.
It wasn't a fit. Now,
Not for
again,
me.
I'm not knocking it
No.
because it's helped a lot of people. And I know a lot of people that I've talked to that said, man, it was a miracle for them.
Yes.
Okay. It's just like certain recoveries aren't for everyone that goes into recovery, right?
Right.
It wasn't a fit for me. I did go through USARA's Craft Family Support Group, which is an amazing, amazing thing to go through. It's completely free. They'll give you all the materials. Get a hold, you
That's
guys, if you're hearing
fantastic.
this, get a hold of USARA that are downtown Salt Lake City, like right off of State Street and 2100 South. Or message me. I'll get you their contact. I'll get you a hold of Tiffany or Kayla over there. I'll get you, or Evans. I know them over there. So it was a great, great program, but I didn't go into that until my wife first started going into her recovery
Okay.
before I finally took it.
And it was amazing,
it
right?
was amazing. I am so glad that I went through it because it really opened my eyes and I'm like, I could have used this 8 years ago.
Yeah, I'd love to see it now, and I feel like I know things, but sometimes the more you know, you realize the less you know, and the more you continually always need to learn
Yeah,
and gain more information. This is a complex disease. It is such a complex disease. That's why there's such varied opinions about how to handle it,
mhm,
is because it is that complex. And I had that moment when somebody finally talked to me straight about the disease, and I went, wow, this changes everything. I had no idea. And I think I shared this with you one time when there was a fall for my spouse. And some friends of ours were staying with us and they thought, well, what, there was anything we did? Did we do this? Did we do that? And I'm like, it was nothing you did. The sun can just come up. And this is what his cousin told me one time. The sun can come up and you suddenly go, I think I'm drinking today. It doesn't even have to be traumatic or something that went wrong.
yeah,
Yeah, those triggers do that, but can be nothing at all. And that's pretty hard to even gauge. And you probably noticed too, sometimes you can feel their tension and when they're gonna break and
oh,
go
yeah,
and bolt.
yeah.
You can
And,
feel it.
and I'm sure, yeah, and I think you're saying that because you know, right? You've gone through it because
I've gone through it.
2.5 years, my spouse sober. And then just one day, it's like it never
Just-
left.
yeah.
It was back just like that. And when I asked, at first I got, I don't know. And I'm like, no,
Exactly.
BS,
Yeah,
BS. I'm not accepting that answer because you do know. What's crazy is what her answer was literally kind of blew me away because I watched her go through more tragic things
then that, then what?
than what happened, right? I mean,
Yes, yes.
she went through, I mean, she lost her mother, who she was very close with. Her mom was a big supporter of hers. She misses her mom still to this day, which a lot of us miss our loved
Oh,
ones,
boy.
right? And she's dealt with it. She's dealt with some other things. All this now, if she's being honest with me,
Mhm.
it was our lease was coming up. Where are we gonna live?
Yeah,
Things are so flippin' expensive anymore. We didn't know where we were gonna go. Nothing fit our budget. And that's,
So that's-
that's what it
can
was.
be that little straw.
That's what it was, to literally go all the way back down to the bottom of
Yeah.
the staircase
Start
and
over again.
start stepping your way back up again,
Exactly.
which turns around and throws us back at the bottom of the staircase. Because for me, I got pretty comfortable, right? I'm thinking, oh my
You
gosh,
do.
okay, this is
Yes.
great. I'm loving where this is going. And I'm just gonna put it to our listeners the way I put it to her. It's like I just left my legs open and gave you a free shot,
Yeah, yeah.
because it hit me to my knees just
Oh,
like
so
that.
quickly.
Yeah.
And you almost get too complacent or comfortable with where they're at. And that's where I had to understand, keep in mind, it could happen again. I think I got to feeling like this is it, it's over. It will never occur and happen again.
Right,
The only thing is once you get older and Janelle's not, didn't she just celebrate a
50,
birthday?
yeah.
So,
yeah, 50, yeah.
she's still kiddo in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
However,
yeah.
I feel like after 40, a lot of people go from fun drinking and thinking that's the fun party scene. It's not fun or party scene much anymore.
Mm-mm.
Once you get to a certain age and your body can't handle that anymore. It nearly kills my spouse if he drinks. I mean, you can just see it tearing down. And you get too old, it's just that much in you at one time like that, it will can kill you.
Yeah,
So that's where, one time we talked about the 3 ways that people die from
right.
this.
That was our
disease.
last show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then I told you just when we sat down,
yeah,
someone recently that passed away from their disease, and it was an accident,
yeah.
a car accident. So see, there's another one, and it's heartbreaking how many lives have claimed for this. And
It is.
when you know they're so sweet and kind and maybe good inside, and you just wish that they valued their own worth to step forward. And I love what one of your people said recently is recently mentioned that those that would accept. Sorry, so she said, you and I we felt like we wanted them to be better so that we can be happy. Now, I thought that was
Yes.
a really good point. I wrote that down. It's the ones where the sisters were talking, and I really enjoyed it. But we do kind of go along, and when I've been with my spouse for so long, met him at 14. You do kind of gauge it on their sobriety, that's what makes us happy. And sometimes it is hard to find the joy when they're in that place, the bad place, the addiction place. It's hard for us to kind of smile and walk forward and say, I can do this and I can be happy by myself. But it's hard.
Yes,
It's very hard.
it's extremely hard, and that's why they say it's a family disease, because we catch it as well, right? I mean, yeah, and it's really hard to, like you were just saying, for this beautiful young lady that just passed. We're coming up on Halloween, right? We know who the individual is. So Halloween, we put on costumes to be someone else.
Right,
That's exactly what the addiction's doing to the people we care about.
right,
It's putting on a mask, it's putting a costume on that we know is not them.
correct.
All we're wanting to do as loved ones is to go over there and rip that mask off, or the clothes, whatever it may be, to get down to that person who we know that person
That's
is.
right.
Problem is, there's nothing we can do. It doesn't matter how many times we go to rip that mask off. If they're gonna put their hands over there to protect it because they don't want it off,
Right.
it doesn't
we
matter.
can't. Well, and it
Yeah.
is a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. The thing that is we know who they really are.
Yep.
We know the person that they are. And when they flip to that other side, you go, oh, I forgot how awful this really is.
Yeah,
And it can be just so awful. And I have compassion for anyone that goes through it. I hope if anyone hears us speak about our side of this disease, that they know they're not alone, and because you do feel alone. We are talking about it more, and I'm so grateful for this podcast and for the fact that we're, like the Healing Summit, that we're having so many people understand where we need to go with this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be talked about more. And again, when I reached out to Diane and asked if she'd love to come back on the show, because I've been having a hard time finding people who are on the other side who want to come on and talk about this situation. And I do get it, right? Because I kept it secret for a long time. However, it's so therapeutic to sit down and discuss it with somebody else that is living it. Diane and I was talking, and maybe we even mentioned at the beginning of the show, I don't know, that how people came up to me and her that said, this is what you need to do, try this, you need to
Yeah.
do that, you should do this. If they're not going through it, how do they know? It's just like us trying to tell the person who's battling addiction what they're supposed to do with us not even knowing.
Right.
It's gonna be like trying to put two magnets together. It's not
Right.
going to happen.
Well, and I think that we don't, and you and I spoke about throwing the person under the bus,
Yeah,
is we have to be careful for their sake, because unless they're the open book, I'm kind of an open book. I've always worn my heart on my sleeve. And I've always been very open and willing to talk about things, but that also opens me up to their, they're saying, criticize me or to tell me what I should do. So then as I age, I think, well, maybe I'm not going to be that open book and I'm going to close up a little bit more. So for our loved ones, we have to be careful how much they want us to open their book,
yeah,
because I'm not sure that they do. And that's should be their say, because if they're in recovery, we don't know where they're at, because something like revealing certain things may just trigger them right back down, and we need them to stay on the path. They don't need to go back and rehash too much in the past. And that's something I was mentioning to you, is that the other day he told me that, that I am so sorry for everything I did. He's not one to speak that way very often. And I turned my back and I kind of had a moment, and all of a sudden the tears kind of started. And I thought, I want to turn around and say, let's talk about this. And I thought, I feel like I was in a place where I had to kind of just let it lie and just let me feel that feeling, but not talk to him about it, because then the stuff comes back up and you start to rehash it. And it's just not serving any good purpose anymore.
you're right.
Yeah, I've kind of learned to say, I don't need to know that stuff anymore. We're working forward now, not backwards. And I need to keep reminding myself of that, because I constantly, my brain takes me back there. I don't necessarily verbalize it.
Well, it's your subconscious, right? Our subconscious is doing it. It doesn't know what's real and what's not. And it's protecting us. That's its job, right?
Yeah.
So that's all it's doing, is protecting us. And that's where we come in. However, a lot of times our ego jumps in with that subconscious too, and it really messes things up.
Ego is really responsible for a lot of
it, yeah. And when you said that you got the sorry, and
Yeah.
I'm just going to be straight up and honest, because again, that's what I love about doing our shows, because it is so raw. I don't accept the sorries anymore. I mean, I don't, because I have heard them
Heard them all.
so many times, and it still continues.
And that's what makes
It's-
us angry.
It still continues. So and a friend of mine pointed this out to me. Sorry is a negative word.
Yeah.
And I really now do see it as a negative word, because it doesn't change anything,
Right.
right? I mean, whenever I hear my loved ones say, I'm sorry, it goes through one ear and out the other. I do not accept it. I will not accept it. And maybe that's bad on my part, but I just won't, because I've heard it with the same situations before.
So many times.
That, and recently it was, and this is another one that just gets under my skin, and maybe it's the same way with you, Diane, is I made a mistake.
Mhm.
I was told 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, no one can make a mistake around Al because he's perfect. My remark to this, and again, I'm not saying I'm right. A mistake is something that you do unintentionally. To me, that's a mistake,
Mhm. Not intentional.
not intentional.
Mhm.
To go and do the same thing over and over and over is not a freaking mistake.
Feels very intentional.
It's an option.
Yeah.
This is a choice that they did, right?
Mhm.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
And I won't, it's not that I'm perfect, because I'm not. I'm not anywhere above anywhere else. I'm at the same freaking playing level as everyone else in this world. We're doing our best to become better. We're doing our best to strive. Well, not everyone. A lot of people are though. A lot of people are working on becoming better individuals. Something we'll work on the rest of our life. However, I just,
Well, see,
Yeah.
and thinking that, okay, saying you're sorry or I made a mistake, see, my spouse doesn't verbalize that very often, so when he said that, it actually took me off guard. Because it'd be more like me to say sorry about something,
Okay.
but not him. However, your point I think you're making is, it is what they show an example and their intent to change themselves. That shows they made the mistake, that they are sorry, that they're moving forward. They
Yeah.
wouldn't even have to say so necessarily, just show through living your life now, trying to be in recovery. And, you know, when you feel the triggers, I wish people would reach out. See, I feel like sometimes those triggers, you know, in AA, you're supposed to reach out to your sponsor if you stay in touch with them. I don't know.
you're supposed
You're
to.
supposed to.
Yeah.
And I think there's a reason for that,
Yeah,
because they're the ones that know, like, say I reached out to you. If I was feeling triggered with the other side and I could talk to you and you would understand. They need to reach out to someone in AA or their sponsor so that they can say, hey, let's go out, let's have a chat, you know, and instead of just going out and taking off on drinking again. And you know, that's what used to frustrate me. Can't you call so-and-so? Can't you, you know, he says, well, once you've made up your mind, you've already made up your mind. Like, I'm not gonna call somebody to stop me from what I wanna do and go drink.
but that again, that's what they're there for, to
Yes.
stop you, right?
Yes, so if you're feeling that, say, oh, I'm feeling this trigger, but he's not a phone guy. He's not a texting guy.
Sounds like somebody I know.
So you know, and that's the thing, is he is quite closed in. Now, when he was in the full range of this disease, he found a group of friends that absolutely embraced that ugly side he had gotten to, and it's ugly, you know, it was like, he wanted to be like the biker, he wanted to be the bad boy, and it's like, what are you, 16 again? And that we see them revert back
Yeah,
in emotional, they just seem like they're a kid again.
yeah,
And he acted that way, and he says, those people didn't know me. And that was actually part of the same conversation we had. He told me that they didn't care about me, and all they wanted to do was drink and see I could drink with them because they were as bad as me, or somebody might be worse. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
they made it all okay. So that's where he went, was with this group. And I stood back going, wait a minute, where did you go?
right,
That's not you.
yeah,
You absolutely love and adore your family. And suddenly the family was nothing anymore. We were nothing. And that's not like him.
right.
The family means a lot.
It's that rebel, right?
Yes.
Because I was told by my loved one that it's like, I just wanted to rebel against it, and I said the same thing, oh, what are you, 15?
Yeah,
I mean, seriously.
yes.
However, I have learned from a lot of the interviews that I've done, that's where the addictive mind kind of takes you, right?
Yes.
It's not, you're not gonna tell me that I can't do this,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because I'll show you,
They show us.
and they show us. I mean, seriously,
And rebel is really part of it.
It
My
is,
husband was
it
big
is.
rebellious kid.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's how he got attention in his family, was to be rebellious.
yeah,
So I feel like somehow that just goes right back. And I would love to know more about that brain and why it does that and how everything triggers. And I've always been fascinated, sad, but fascinated with how the brain, they go off at a high level of their disease. And once they drink, they go right back there. It doesn't matter how long it's been.
oh, yeah, it's like turning the light switch off and on, right? It's
Yep.
that fast.
They don't climb anymore.
Uh-uh.
It's right there.
Uh-uh.
So, and it's sad,
Yeah.
very sad.
You know, there are a lot more groups out there now, Diane, to help support people like ourselves, other individuals that are out there. I don't know if we have sponsors.
Mm.
Why don't we have sponsors?
I feel like, didn't they, see, you and I didn't go far enough into Al-Anon, because you and I both failed again. It's great for so many people,
Yeah,
just not a fit for us. I
Yeah.
actually came out of it more depressed
I did too.
than I came out
I
of it in
came
any
out
kind of positivity.
Angry as hell.
And I remember thinking, I don't understand why they say I can't help them. And I was just like you. I was like, why can't I be the one to help? Nope, you can't. You don't know what they feel. And it took me forever to get that through my brain. But On Al-Anon, I thought they had sponsors, but I'm not sure.
I'm not 100%
I
sure
never
either,
went
because I
back.
didn't stick around long enough, and I guess I need to ask, in all honesty, I
Yeah.
need to ask someone. However, I really do believe it's really good for sponsors.
Mhm.
Now, I'm very lucky because everyone that I work with is in recovery. I mean, seriously, everyone. And there's a gentleman who's actually gonna be on a show later today.
Uh-huh. Really?
His name's Cap. I work with him. He's in long-term recovery. He's an amazing individual. He is the guy in long-term recovery, now on the other side, right? And he understands, because he understands both sides.
That's fascinating,
And
yeah.
I love to speak with him because in almost in all reality, he's my sponsor. If that makes sense,
It
because I
does.
will go to him with certain things and go, okay,
It does make
Cap, I'm
sense.
confused here. This is what I want to say. Is this the right thing to do? And he'd go either yes or no. Oh, heck no.
No,
Do not
definitely
go down this route.
Right,
And it really helps me because our communication is very, very sensitive with our loved ones that are battling
very
addiction.
sensitive.
Very sensitive, because you don't want to accuse. You don't want to bring back the old triggers.
Right,
You don't want to bring back old feelings. And even if it's been years,
Mhm.
you just said it. It
Yep.
just takes a flip of a light
Yep,
switch to
right
bring
back here.
everything right back. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you having someone you can talk to, and I'm glad you have that person. Because now you said he's coming on, because I will.
Yeah, he's
totally
coming
wanna
on,
watch that.
coming on later. Yeah, today
Yeah.
for the show. Yeah.
But my friend, the one I told you that I can call and talk to. I mean, we all have really sweet, dear friends, and I have many wonderful friends, but she is the one friend that really, really listens with compassion and understands the disease well. She, if I had to come to her and say, this has happened, I just don't feel judged.
Yeah.
She understood the reason I was so connected, and this is something that goes back for anyone that meets their spouse so young, is I think we are not done growing emotionally. And I think that connection is good and bad. It's probably more dependent on each other because you were so young as you grew up, and we both had our stuff maybe younger. And that's why we grabbed a hold of each other and held on so tight. And yes, that formed a great bond and love. However, it also made it more difficult if I decided I needed to go. I struggled with that. Loretta Lynn was someone that she recently passed, well, a year ago passed away.
Yeah.
He met her husband. He was quite a bit older, but she was only like 13 or 14 years old. I was 14. And I could see it in her things she said because he was an alcoholic.
Yep. Yeah.
And they went through some battles. Sometimes they were in physical battle with each other. And she says, she's just a tough little chick. She was awesome.
Yeah.
And she chose to stay. Look at her fame, look at her money. And she never wanted to leave him. So do we judge her as a weak woman? Do we think she's weak? I don't. And I worry, and I worry too much about what other people think. I need to stop that because it's not healthy for me. But I worry that they think, oh, you're just weak. You're just too dependent. You let him do this, that, and the other. And I thought, well, that's what you're saying. You don't know my life.
I'm not in your shoes, Diane. I mean, seriously, I'm not, because I've had a few people say that to me, and I respect what they're saying, right?
Yes.
I don't throw anything against them, and I am so close to having my other foot. I've got one foot out already, and the other one really close to the threshold, and I am
Yes.
so close because I've been putting up with it for so long,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And to have it come back again,
Just
do I really want to go through this whole battle again? Because the trust is completely broken,
you lose the trust.
and it took me a long time to gain it. Now all of a sudden it's broke again. Will I ever get it back? I don't know. In time, possibly. How much time? I don't know. Do I want to give myself that time? Again, I don't know.
Right.
I just hit 60. I vision my life being somewhere else in the next 10 years,
Mhm.
right? And in that, none of that addiction crap is
Yeah.
in it.
You feel like you want to be done with
It's
that.
gone.
But-
Yeah.
But they
yeah.
quickly remind us, oh, no, you're not.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
And then you go, wait
Yeah.
a minute, I was getting comfortable and I have done the same. I have done the same.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, well, and I think where my spouse is at is if there is a fall, I feel like now he wants to not fall back in it completely. And do we just, I remember you saying, do we celebrate how many days it's been and not worry about the ones that we fell?
Right.
It just kind of depends, because if they fall back so hard, they just go right back in it. Then we have to make the decision, do we want to stay with this? Or are we really gonna go through this again? And that's the hard choice we have.
With you saying that comes in, I think the forgiveness comes in. You mentioned earlier, not in the show, but before we got on, are there stages of forgiveness? Because I never really thought of it that way until I saw your
Right.
remarks, and we talked a little bit about it. And I really started thinking a little bit more about it, and I'm going, gosh, I think there possibly is stages, right? Because there's stages into someone falling into their addiction.
Mhm.
There's stages of like, I love going to the gym. There were certain stages that I went through to get me to where I'm at today,
Right,
right? We go through stages in our job. We work to go through maybe to climb the corporate ladder, however, right? There are stages, definitely, many of them in our life. Hopefully, we're constantly
we're
growing
trying to
and
grow and
moving.
improve, we hope so.
So thinking about it a little bit more, it's like there literally are stages
I agree,
in almost everything that we do in our life. Forgiveness has got to be one of them too, right? There
It
has to
does.
be the stages.
it does, and some people say you hold in that portion of forgiveness where you haven't fully forgiven yet, like say you've got 15%, you're just not quite there yet. And sometimes it never comes, and I just finally got gentle with myself, because all I kept thinking was I've got to completely forgive this individual, I have to be on board or not. And there are gray areas, and I think that again, they just said it's a work in progress. This was a book a friend gave me some years back about forgiveness, and it sure helped me a lot. Again, because I thought the stages, okay, Diane, you're okay. You're still in this stage, but you're not falling back.
Yeah.
You're still kind of working. So yeah, there's a lot to forgive.
Oh my gosh.
I think about, sometimes I can't let myself think about too much, or then I don't continue on that path of forgiveness. So,
Well, and again, I said at the beginning of the show, forgiving ourselves, I think, is the beginning,
Mhm.
right? And I don't know if that makes sense to a lot of our listeners, because again, we get dragged down that rabbit hole of addiction. And you guys may look at it the same way I looked at it. Why do I need to forgive myself? I didn't do anything wrong. Go back and do some soul searching and really think about it, because and again, I'm not knocking you guys down, because both Diane, we've lived it, right? We've
Yes.
gone through it. I know I did a lot of things wrong once I started putting my mind into it a
Same.
lot more. I said things wrong, my actions were wrong. There are things I could have definitely done differently. Would it had stopped the addiction sooner? I don't know, because it's their option, right? It's their choices that they are making.
Absolutely.
However, for me, I literally had to set myself down, really start doing some soul searching and go, oh my gosh, I really have to forgive myself, because I did a lot of things wrong. And it was my journey to forgive them.
Mhm.
Now, I'm also a firm believer, there are people who have hurt me that I have forgiven. However, it doesn't mean I want them in my life,
Exactly, you
right?
can do
They're
that.
they're back here.
Yeah.
They're a distance.
Yeah.
They are a distance. I will still do my best to be polite
Mhm.
and say hi.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit down and have a conversation with you though.
Right.
Right?
You'll be cordial.
I'll be cordial. That's the word I'm
Yeah.
looking for. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it doesn't serve you any purpose to have the hate behind it.
No.
To just look at them with daggers and just think, oh, I don't even want to be in this room with them. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not good for us.
No.
It
And,
hurts.
and that just recently happened to me. I mean, just 4 or 5 days ago. There was a family thing going on in
Mhm.
my wife's side of the family. And I got there and there was an individual there that literally probably 2 years ago or so,
Mhm.
I probably wouldn't hesitate to want to get right up in his face, right? I would want to start something just to hope he was gonna push back, so I had my excuse to do what I wanted to do.
Right,
I really, really, before going to this event, it was running in my head the whole time. If I see this individual, how do I handle this? What do I do? My subconscious was coming up, oh yeah, get right in his face, my ego,
yeah,
right?
right,
And then it was literally almost 5 minutes before we got there. All of a sudden, I got this calmness.
good,
I chilled out and I went, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
We talked about a droplet of water going
Yes.
into a river. That little droplet of water is not the same droplet of water once it hits that river. It's gone, right?
Yeah.
It's going with the flow. Now
It
it's a
dissipates.
huge
Yep.
thing of water. It's not a little drop anymore. It's much, much bigger. It's beautiful. That's how I just wanted to look at it.
Mhm.
And that individual was there. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is great. All right, well, I guess I'm gonna test my theory out.
Yeah,
And I was doing my best to stay away. However, there came a time literally where we were crossing paths.
Mm.
And he looked at me and I looked at him and I said hi to him. And then I said hi to his wife and I just kept walking.
I think that's
And I
excellent.
tell you what, the weight that came off my shoulders
Mhm.
was huge.
So,
So I forgave
yeah,
a while ago. However, also realizing what my thoughts were, that all that forgiveness wasn't totally gone.
that's right,
That weight came off me. Now, still to this day though, stay in a distance.
yeah,
Don't get in my face. Don't come and try to carry a conversation with me because I don't want anything to do with
Right.
it. However, if you say hello, I'll say hello back
and that's just
and leave it at that.
right, and we don't have to have those individuals in our life. I think that we feel like if we do full forgiveness, they have to be in our life. And we don't have to do
Right.
that,
Right.
as long as we have the peace. And it's peace for you now. Maybe you'll still feel a little of contention if you see this person, but now the test, you passed that test, you can do it
Yeah,
and go forward. And something I was gonna tell you out,
yes,
the friend that, when I was on your podcast last time, I lost a very dear friend. So how I do a lot of the dog stuff, animal stuff, and we were on a fly ball team together. And it was when her last 20-year relationship with her significant other broke up, she kind of started spiraling downward and pretty fast. She got into, I believe, meth and probably heroin, because I hear now it's like they do the meth, but they gotta do the heroin to bring them down, they gotta do the meth to bring them back up. So they're juggling this back and forth. Anyway, she got addicted to that. She ended up committing suicide. And the thing on forgiveness with her, now see, I can forgive the person in my present, my spouse in my life, because he's working on recovery. Where she never said she had a problem. She was nowhere near wanting recovery because she had to admit it. So she dies this way. So here's the problem I saw with forgiveness toward her. Now that she's gone, her sister and myself, who speak about this at times, we're having a hard time forgiving what she turned into. Because she turned into something kind of ugly and she hated everyone. And she was going to, when she died, before she died or committed suicide, she was going to write us all a nasty note to tell us exactly how she felt. And then have them mailed by someone after she died. Now, this was ongoing for like 3 years. We heard this was going to happen.
wow,
And so I thought, would I open that letter? Would I just tear it up? And it took me a while back and forth. I thought, no, I think I'd tear it up because that is not who she was. It was in the end, unfortunately, but that was not who she was. She was a dear, wonderful person that cared about people and their pets. When you lost a pet, she was the first one to be right there, to be so kind and right there for you and understood your pain. And so sad she went down that way and finally lost her life. Now, forgiveness for her, I have to forgive what she turned into. And I'm struggling with remembering what she once was. So
Yeah.
if we lose a loved one in the process of alcoholism or addiction, and we never make any kind of connection with them again because that's the path they chose, then it's an interesting piece of forgiveness I'm working on with her memory. and I'm trying. But
Yeah.
that one's not coming quite so easy, but I'm working on it.
You know, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Diane. I think you saw the show that just came out yesterday. My beautiful friend Alyssa that came on the show. I met her 3 years ago with the West Jordan Stampede Rodeo Committee. I've been on the committee for quite a
Okay.
few years,
Mhm.
and there's a morning that we do breakfast for the Cowboys.
Uh-huh.
And 3 years ago, I met her. She was there cooking some eggs and stuff, and I was there doing the same thing, and we chatted just a little bit. The second year, we opened up quite a bit. We really started talking about our lives and what's been going on. Come to find out, her husband battled alcoholism. She found out 2 weeks after they got married.
I think I started into this podcast and I
this
haven't
one?
finished.
Yeah,
This is really interesting.
you'll definitely want to listen to this whole one. And she ended up losing her husband, committed suicide. 6 months after that, she was pregnant with twins, lost one of the babies. Now, I don't, and again, guys, we don't talk religion on this show, okay? We talk spirituality because there's all kinds of different forms of spirituality. And I think spirituality, at least how I see it, is completely separate of religion.
Completely agree.
Whatever your higher power is. So she fell into her higher power, which was God for her. That helped her get through where she needed to go. Because can you imagine losing your husband to suicide, 6 months later losing your baby?
Right.
Right? I mean, the baby was dead inside of her. And when she gave birth, she had to hold her baby that wasn't even alive.
Right.
And she just buried her freaking husband.
Yeah.
For a lot of us, I don't even know if I would have had the strength to get through what she went through.
Right.
And to be where she's at today. And it's her faith and her belief that has helped give her the strength. So, and I'm saying this because I think it helps with a lot of us to give our pain and our feelings over to something bigger than us, whether it's the mountain, a crystal in our pocket, God, the universe, Zeus,
Yes.
Buddha, whatever,
Reminds me of
right?
Sheena.
Okay, so that is to where I'm
It's
saying,
one of my dogs.
give that
Give that
power
power.
over to them,
Yeah.
because it takes so much burden off of
Awful.
us.
Yes.
You know, and I've literally had to do that myself. I mean, I literally finally one day I hit my knees and I just said, I cannot do this anymore. I don't know what direction to go. I always took pride in myself that if something's hard, I can go through it.
Yeah.
This was
powered
something
through
I
it.
couldn't do.
You couldn't power through
I
this.
couldn't, because
Isn't it interesting?
I kept ramming against that freaking
Yeah.
wall over and over and over and
Yes.
over. And I don't know if you guys have seen the movie I Am Legend with Will Smith. It's the zombies, right? And at the end of the show, where that zombie wants to get him and keeps smashing into the window,
That's how you
and he's
feel.
trying to.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
Seriously,
What do
that's
you
how I
do?
felt. So finally, as Carrie Underwood puts it, I let go of the wheel,
Uh-huh.
right? And I'm like, God, you take it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not making it, right?
And you remember the tilt-a-whirl?
I do.
I was
Yeah.
gonna tell you because
Yeah.
I like this little comparison. Is I feel like with the tilt-a-whirl, I remember with my friends in junior high, we'd all try to fight to one side to get that spin out of it, and then you wouldn't get it. And then you'd be, okay, fight to this side, and you try to get the spin out of it. And sometimes you could just let go and you'd spin anyway. So I feel like sometimes we fight to get to that. And sometimes if we let go and bring that peace into our heart, and some of that is a higher power for people. I feel like we fight too hard. We're trying to
We
get that
do.
spin. We're trying to get that something to work for us, and it's just not working. You're fighting that tilt-a-whirl to get that spin. But I'm wondering too, with the lady you were mentioning, which I would love to finish the podcast, she must have had some forgiveness to have to think about her husband not knowing that he really was an alcoholic when they married. It was just down here kind of in recovery.
Yeah.
He revisited it, and it ultimately cost him his life.
Well, and what was crazy too is, you know, she was saying in the podcast that he was sick, throwing up and everything else. She couldn't figure out what was going on. She's talked to the family and the family's like, yeah,
Yep.
he's drinking. So apparently
She
the
didn't even
family
know.
and the family never said anything. Right? Not a word.
Yeah,
Now,
Yeah.
and again, she's not holding that against him, right? I
right.
mean, because she's like, whatever their reasons behind it was, that's their reasons
Yeah.
behind it. So she couldn't hold it against him, and she doesn't. However, I just, yeah,
Bless
just
her
can't
heart,
imagine that, right?
because-
yeah,
Because she was probably not privy to this disease at all,
no,
to not even really recognize what was going on. What it was is when he started, I'm thinking, I don't know for sure, but when he started back in his drinking, he went right back here. And
mhm,
he was already in that blackout stage where they could vomit or they're out, or
yeah,
some people are walking, talking, which was one of the things I learned later on down the road about this disease, is I thought blackout meant passed out. And it doesn't necessarily. And so I sounds like with him, he goes down for the count. And that's where my spouse is if this occurs, it's like gone for 3 days. It's just gone. And it's just super spooky, because then you see death coming. And that's,
yeah,
and obviously he got back into that disease and decided once it grabbed him again, he didn't want to live that way anymore. And that's heartbreaking, especially where it left her. So
Yeah.
hopefully she's worked on her own higher power and her forgiveness within this disease and with him.
and I have to say, she really has. She's because I asked her a year ago,
Mhm,
would you like to come on the show? And she says no. No. And I didn't get a chance to see her this year to feed the Cowboys because I had something else going on that Saturday.
mhm,
Couldn't make it out there to do it. However, I ran into her at the rodeo, you
mhm.
know, and we sat down in the tent and we started talking, and she goes, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
And it's
Good
been
for her.
7 years. And what's crazy, 7 years this month.
Really
And so she said, I'm coming on the show. And she did.
interesting.
And she did.
Good for her.
Yeah, really
Because
good
that
for
was,
her.
that's
Yeah.
a real healing for her. And hopefully it'll reach others, especially others that are really not understanding this disease. Like I told you, it's so complex. It needs a lot of education and a lot of things that still surprise us all.
Yeah.
Within it, so
Absolutely. Absolutely.
good for her.
So, I mean, we talked about real quick, because I think we only have about 20 minutes left, because I wanna honor your time schedule. A lot of times, I think with people that I've interviewed with that's battled addiction, and even with us on the other side, I think sometimes we feel like our purpose is lost.
Mhm,
And you mentioned something about a lot of people, once they retire,
mhm.
they end up passing within the first year to, I guess within the first year to the 5th year, right? The first 5 years somewhere in there.
Yeah,
Because their purpose is lost. They have
Exactly.
nowhere to go. They were happy that they don't have to work
Yeah,
anymore,
but
but then
suddenly-
they don't know where else to go,
suddenly
right?
this time is in their lap.
I
and
know.
they're like,
What do I do with it?
yeah,
And I'm a big supporter of our blue and our first responders. They see a lot of stuff we don't see. Probably the majority of stuff that they see, none of us want to see.
and they don't
Right.
want to talk about it.
And they don't want to talk about. And I know a handful of our blue who on their days off, man, that's all they do is drink. They're drinking to forget.
Forget what they saw.
And then when they retire, when they get their 30+ years in and they go off to go do something else, they don't have to be sober Monday through Friday anymore, or whatever
Right.
their shift was. Right now, they can drink daily if they want to.
Right.
And it happens.
Yeah.
And it happens. And a lot of them are taking their lives. I know my good friend Holly Lang started, you know, the peer support program for our first responders.
Mhm.
And even though she's retired and I think her and her husband moved to Montana, I'm hoping that program is still going.
No.
However, again, it's that purpose is often lost.
It is, and in retirement with the time on your hands, I'm seeing it with people, and I've heard about it through Mix AA, that they start drinking and suddenly they're like, I didn't have a problem with drinking. Why now? So really, you can step into this disease.
Yeah.
At any point. And another thing too is trauma sparks off this disease too, because I had a friend whose husband died and she decided she never drank ever, ever, ever. And she was in her 40s and she took her first drink. And it was a way to cope. After she lost him, she had 4 girls to still raise. And she, bless her heart, she is the sweetest person on the planet. And this has grabbed her like that. In fact, pretty quickly, because usually alcoholism is a slower step. You know, drugs are quicker, but the alcohol is kind of a slow thing. And sometimes it can go along and then say the retirement happens and boom, or say the trauma happens and boom,
Yeah.
and that goes that way. So she, and I wanted so much for her to contact me about where to go on this last rehab, because you know, so many good places. Well, a handful of good places.
Yeah.
And it's not putting any others down, but I feel like some of them are in it for the money.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like the ones you have spoke about, just makes me so pleased, because I always felt this way and I had no idea there were some good ones out there. And I'm so glad to know there are. If she ever reaches out to me again, I will be happy to ask you again. I know the Other Side Academy is
Yeah,
one.
Other Side Academy, Red Barn, Natsu
Uh-huh.
is a good one. USARA is a really
USARA.
good
I mean,
resource,
look how
right?
many, these are good 5 or so
Absolutely.
of good ones.
Yep.
These people want to see your success. They feel like I do when a dancer skips for the first time, the joy I get
Yeah,
to see them accomplish that motor skill.
Yeah.
They want to see you find that spot too, like they did. Because
absolutely.
most of them are recovering addicts. That's why they give back
Yeah.
and they're doing this for others.
Yeah.
It's not because it's big bucks, it's because it matters to them to make a difference in
Well, and
someone's
it's
life.
because it's helping them.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's helping them in their recovery more, and all of them have said this.
Right.
It's helping them in their recovery more than what they feel like they're helping the other.
It's right. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank goodness.
yeah, right.
We have these now. I'm glad to know it, because I just felt, I knew the system seemed broken in the fact that you'd see these people spend all this money in recovery, and then they'd throw them right back out into this world of what we see and what we do and the things that are going to trigger them. And they have no tools to
Mhm.
help themselves. They don't have any way to stay sober, and they don't frankly care. You
No,
know, so that I
No.
was like, this doesn't work. You're just taking their money.
well, it's an ATM.
Yeah.
It's an ATM.
Yeah.
We just recently brought on like White Tree Medical,
Uh-huh.
and that's what they do. So people who are getting out of the recovery that have nowhere else to go, right? That have to be on certain meds to help them with certain things.
Yeah.
Once they leave that recovery, those meds are gone, especially if their insurance doesn't cover it.
Yeah.
So where else do they go?
Yeah.
These guys, they showed me a list.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a list of paper like this on both sides, and
Wow.
another one that's full of insurance companies that they've worked hard to get to where
Yeah.
now people can go there to help them. And then what they do also is they help them, and I hope I'm doing you guys justice. They help them get off the meds that they really don't need to be on, right?
Right.
They help them get more into a healthier
Yes.
type living.
Exactly.
And they're there, and they even have a psychiatrist there or a therapist there that
Mhm.
helps them. That's not even part of it.
Right.
They don't, I mean, they just offer it
That's
to the
awesome.
people that walk in their door.
I'm so
And
glad.
of course, the first initial visit's a little longer, and after that, it's like 10 excuse me, 10 minutes or 15 minutes. But at least they have someone to go in and talk to.
Yeah.
So
Thank
yeah,
goodness.
yeah.
Well, then I can tell that these people, I bet when they sit down and these individuals need their help so bad, it's a real feeling. It isn't. And to give you an example, at one time when my husband and I were living separate, he went across the street. He was so desperate to get help. And I don't even know which one this is. It's by Sportsman's Warehouse on 7200 and just east of the freeway. And he walked into their doors and he says, he was just desperate.
Oh, I know which one you mean.
And he goes,
Okay.
I need help. And they're like, well, do you have, the money? Do you have insurance? And they're just very cold. And I just broke my heart. I thought, this man is coming to you. You have no idea how much he would never seek help. He just would not.
Yeah,
And then again, this is when we were separated. So it makes me cry because I just think how desperate he must have been to go there that day. And he just walked away,
Yeah.
went back to his little room we was staying in, so.
That's why I think these things need to change. There needs to be more programs like TOSA and Red Barn,
Yeah.
because it's completely free.
How about the one in Tooele? You said that was Natsu?
Not to, they take Medicaid.
Medicaid, and this
They
is
take
something that not
Medicaid.
everyone,
Uh-uh.
Medicaid does, so that made me happy to hear that for other individuals that are looking for that may have Medicaid, because if you have Medicaid, you're usually, it's pretty destitute.
It
And I'm
is.
glad that they will do that for that population.
Yeah, your options are very small.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a big choosing, I
Yeah.
guess is the right way of
Yeah.
saying it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good for them.
So, gosh, we only got about a few minutes left, and again, to honor your time, is there anything else that you would like to share that you had written down on your notes? And I love that you always come with notes, because you know exactly where you want to touch
Yeah.
base on it, and I love that. Yeah.
Well, I think that we got all of it in that we wanted to talk about on
Okay.
forgiveness. I do have to say though, on my own recovery, I feel like we are recovering too.
Absolutely.
And we're still always recovering. When I said forgiveness is, can be partial, and recovery is, I'm still working to recover my triggers. I have triggers too, that happened that set me back into the place where I don't help him. I just make it worse like I did in the old days. And I have to keep reminding myself, don't go there, don't act like that, don't talk like that, because that would make everything worse. So again, recovery on our end too, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is so true. Diane nailed it. It's spot on. And I've really learned so much. Am I perfect at it? By all means, heck no. I am still learning, and I will continue to learn. However, it has helped me to understand again that like Diane said, we have triggers. We have to set our boundaries, and we have to stay strong. No matter how bad it hurts us, we have to stick to our boundaries. I mean, we literally do. And guys, if any of you are on the other side and you have a loved one that's battling addiction, I mean, message us.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, get on Facebook and message us and say, hey, I need someone to talk to. Two individuals right here. We've had just a few other people who have been on our show. Of course, I'd have to check with them to be sure it's okay. I'm sure, Diane, you'd be more
I'd be
than happy
happy
to
to.
talk with somebody. And I've been on the phone quite a few times since I've started this podcast, which is crazy because my past producer told me this would happen, and I okay, yeah, sure. And it's literally has happened. People call me and they say, hey, I've got someone who's got a loved one that's battling addiction. They need some help. They need some advice. Would you be willing to talk to them? I will always be
Yes.
willing to talk to them. They may not always like what I have to say, and it's because I'm going to say what people have said to me, right? It's like being a sponsor for someone who's in the addiction. Sometimes you got to be a little hard-nosed, not being that way to be rude or ignorant, to hopefully get it through their head, because it took me a long time getting knocked upside the head with a baseball bat before I finally
Yeah.
realized, why haven't I been listening to them? And again, it's because we love them, right?
It is. We
Yeah.
have the best intentions.
We do.
However, again, the therapists we thought we found out quickly that they needed someone in their shoes.
Yeah.
To be their therapy, and we need someone in our shoes
Exactly.
for therapy, and you have been therapy for me. I sometimes,
thank you.
I wake up at night sometimes, and I just think it's random. It's nothing terrible, but sometimes I can't sleep. So I'll put my little AirPods in and I'll listen to your podcast. And sometimes if I miss it, because I fall back asleep, I go back and I listen again, because this is
Yeah.
therapy and wonderful. Thank you, Al.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So guys, please reach out to us and check out our shows, because and I'm not saying that to help us build. Yes, okay, in a way I am. However, we've had some really awesome people on our shows that got some great stuff. We talked about a little bit about therapy earlier, and again, I am thankful for therapists, because I went through 6 months of therapy to learn how to control a very, very bad anger issue I had throughout all my teenage years up to into my early 20s before I finally got a grasp of it. There are people out there that can help where it's not that revolving psychiatrist door, right? They can help, and I'm not saying this with all of them. There are some that will continue to keep you coming back. They will take you in very, very, very baby steps because they want that income, just like some recovery centers, to keep having that money coming in. These people that are coming on the show, these individuals, they're there for the people.
Yes,
A lot of these programs, they've got it down. They've worked hard on it. They've studied on it. They've done their due diligence to where within 2 to 3, sometimes 4 sessions can get you to where you need to be. Because again, if they feel if they keep having you come back, they're failing.
Mhm.
They are failing. And it's because they want to help you, right? So it's good to look for places like that. And if anybody is interested, you guys, if you watch the show, man, you'll know who I'm talking about. There's a lot of great resources out there, especially for us who, and it's just not even if we have a loved one that's battling addiction. It's just with life in general,
It is.
right?
These stories and these journeys of people have always inspired me. And I think that's why I used to enjoy when I did read, because I would read for information more than I read for joy. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to be that kind of reader, but I'm not. But when I would read people's autobiographies and their journeys in life, that always inspired me, whether it had addiction in it or not. However, addiction stories to me are so impressive because of how hard it has to be. I can't even imagine being in their shoes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Picturing being in a room, 4 walls, filled with junk and completely black, and trying to find your way out.
super scary.
Super scary, not knowing what, and every time you went one direction, you're falling over something.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
So Diane, before we finish this up, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Just to end with that forgiveness is not always 100%, and it's done. Be gentle with yourself and always remember that forgiveness is a work in progress. Recovery is also a work in progress. And on both sides, we need to think about that. And so just remember forgiveness isn't a one done deal all the time.
Okay,
Yeah.
great advice. Guys, again, thank you. Thank you, Diane,
Thank
for
you,
being
Al.
here with us for a 3rd time. I
Yes.
love having you on the show. I'm sure you'll be
Appreciate it.
back
Well, I
because
love it.
I love our
I
conversations. I
enjoy
really
it so
do.
much. Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoy it as well. Thank you to all our listeners, all our sponsors. And again, guys, we couldn't do it without you. You guys are the ones that is making this a success. And man, a lot of things that I'm looking at here for the near future. Hopefully, with God's will, everything turns out good. Before we sign off, guys, please mark your calendars. Saturday, October 7th, from 1 to 6 p.m. at the Miller Free Enterprise Building in Sandy. We got our Healing Utah Success Summit. John Ashby, the former Jazz Bear, is going to be emceeing. My lovely friend Mallory Roosh from St. George is going to be talking a little bit, sharing a little bit about her story, and also giving some education and inspiration. Brad Neufeld, the owner of Resilience Talk Network, where I used to do my shows, as well as Curtis Marsh, Rising Above the Chaos. And I have been working hard on my talk as well. Guys, come out and be inspired. I guarantee that you will. And bring some tissues because I know you'll have some tears. We're going to leave you with this as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out. Love you guys.